Jeremy, what's going on, brother?
How's it going, Rich?
Good.
See
Good seeing you. How's everything going?
Everything's going really well, man.
Is it? Just remember when you're going in, speak in the mic so they get it and I don't get in trouble. All right?
Yes, sir. You got it.
Tell me about yourself. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Roslyn. Went to Roslyn High School.
Okay. And what year was that?
Graduated in 92.
Okay. So my group. I'm a little sooner than you. I was 87. College was 91, 92, which I never finished. And then what'd you get into after school?
I went to college in Boston. Went to Boston University for business.
Oh, you went to BU?
Yeah, I went to BU. After that, came back to New York. My father was in the investment, finance. So I ended up working in an off Wall Street brokerage firm for a while. I was I had a Series 7 license. I was a stockbroker, did some IPOs, things like that.
What year was that?
That would be
in the .com day?
96, like 97.
Okay,
no, so it was like
before that.
Yeah, before that. And then I did that for a while, and I liked it. I just didn't like to be sitting behind a desk all day. I just, it was like, you're on the phone all the time. You meet clients, but it's like rare, like you're locked. Anyway, one morning my father calls me. He says, it was a Saturday. He said, get up, meet me. We belong to a country club in Old Brookville. Come meet me. We're playing golf. One of the guys canceled, and he can't make it. So I showed up there with my dad, my uncle, and who is currently now the CEO of Colliers, was who they were playing golf with.
Oh, cool.
Which was Sutton Edwards at the time. I don't know if you remember that.
Remember that.
Right? So anyway, so we started talking to him, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I explained it to him. He's like, "You ever think about real estate?" And I had, because my father and my uncle, my grandfather, both grandfathers owned real estate. They were entrepreneurs. They had businesses. I think I thought about it. It just wasn't something that I ever considered as a career, right? Yep. He's like, "Well, come see me." And they were in Lake Success. I was living in Manhattan at the time. So I came and saw him, and he's like, "Go get your license. Come on." And I was like, "You know what? I did it."
A lot different than the Series 7, too. It's a lot easier.
A lot easier.
I took the Series 7.
Yeah, and when I took it, I remember back then, it was this room with like 300 people in there, and back then, like, they gave you the results on the spot, like you pass the test. I remember taking the test, and I look around, and everyone's like, I finished it. I'm like, looking around, raise my hand. Anyway, passed the test, and so I worked for them.
Where'd you take it? Where'd you take the test? In John?
Yeah, on John Street.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where they always did it. I mean, I don't know any other place that they did it.
When'd you get licensed?
My first license was in 1999.
Oh, so you got it much earlier than me.
Yeah, in 99, and then I was there for 7 years, and then I ended up moving to California.
Okay.
I went out there on a trip. I knew a bunch of people from from college, from high school, that were living in L.A., Orange County, and in Northern California, which I'd never been to Northern California before. Just took a trip out there to see some friends, and ended up in Northern California. And I was introduced to a gentleman who became a business partner of mine. And I ended up leaving the real estate business and opening up an art gallery, a wine bar, and an event space in downtown San Francisco on a whim. It was kind of
interesting.
Yes. So
now you go from stockbroker, real estate agent, to selling art and wine.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
However,
and event space.
Yes.
All right.
I did get my real estate license in California as soon as I got there, because we were we had to renovate the space. It was a while before we were able to move in and start.
Now, let's stay on your first real estate. Were you doing commercial, or were you doing?
Yes, I always did commercial.
Always did commercial real estate. Okay.
Yeah, the only residential I've only really ever done was a friend of my family owns a bunch of walk-ups on the Upper East Side. Sometimes when he had like a bunch of vacancies, I'd go to an open house on the weekend and rent them out.
Okay, just for extra cash.
Yeah, just for extra cash. But other than that, I've never done a residential.
Interesting.
Besides multifamily, but all commercial.
All commercial real estate.
Commercial, yes.
Okay, so now you end up in L.A. or wherever, San Francisco.
I was in the San Francisco Bay Area. Yeah.
But you flew down to L.A., I'm assuming.
Yes, I flew down to L.A. first, then Orange County, then back north. Right.
Okay. You end up in San Francisco. What year is this now?
This is now 2010?
5.
Oh,
no,
5. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. You got licensed in 99.
Yeah.
So you did 6 years and then went to San Fran. Okay, so 2005, you were in San Fran. What's that like? Is it like it is today, or?
It was great then. The city was amazing.
So this
If
is
it
when
was,
it was really popping.
Oh,
San Fran.
yeah,
'Cause San Fran was very nice back in
it
the
was
day.
beautiful. I mean, I would never live there today.
Correct, yeah.
But the way it was back then, it was, I mean,
It was San
everything
Francisco.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
The food was great. The culture.
I've never been there, but I always heard great things until
Yeah,
recently.
just everything, about it. It reminds me like a mini New York, but with scenery. You got the water, you got the mountains.
Yeah,
but you
somebody
have the
told me like a
city.
Boston.
Yes.
More
But
like
it was
but
like
it
a
had
combination
hills.
of both.
Yeah.
That was kind of what it was. And I went to college in Boston, so it like kind of reminded me of both of them.
Okay.
I just loved it there. And anyway, so I met this guy. He owned an art gallery, a very small one, and he just signed a lease on a 5,000 square foot space,
Okay.
and he was freaking out.
Interesting. Okay.
Freaking out. He's like, I think I don't know.
What I did, yeah.
So I was introduced to him. My friend knew I was in real estate. I knew some things, and so we started talking, and we formed a partnership, and we opened it up, and it originally opened up as just an art gallery.
Okay.
And then 2008 hit, and things started. No one was buying art during a recession. It's a luxury purchase. No one's buying art, so we had to figure out.
Nobody was buying real estate.
No one's buying anything, right?
Exactly.
Everyone, no one's buying anything. So we had to figure out some, a different way to operate to stay in business. So I came up with this mathematical equation, and we started leasing out the gallery space in the gallery. So what we had done is when we constructed it, we had constructed 52 of these 3-wall vignettes. Okay?
Interesting.
And so what we started to do was rent out each one of those,
Okay.
either for $500 each, or I think we're doing like 12,000 or 1,200 for all 3 a month.
So you're like the first WeWorks.
Kind of with art.
With art.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that paid out all the bills. Paid the rent, paid our employees. We had 5 or 6 employees, and we put a little money in our pockets.
Which is God bless, yeah.
Yeah. Art sales were minimal, but no one really cared because most of these were up and coming artists. They weren't all from San Francisco. We were taking them from all over the country and even around the world. You have some kid in Tennessee who's a great painter. He'd never have a chance to get into an art gallery in downtown San Francisco. So even if they didn't sell anything, they'd love the exposure.
Sure.
Right. So
what was the biggest piece you ever sold?
There was an Australian artist that we had who had some really wacky stuff. Kind of dark. But one of his pieces, I think, was over $100,000.
Oh, wow.
That we sold. But weirdly enough, that really wasn't our big thing with selling art. It was the place. It was like
the event space.
Well, the event space came later. So what we did was we had a small bar that we built when we opened it up. Just with a kitchenette, just so we had somewhere to for our own purposes. It wasn't really for anyone else. But we had art openings, and what we do is we would serve wine. We get cheap wine. We put it in a
nice bottle of wine.
We'd start dumping bottles in one of those, like with icy, right? And people walk up to the bar, and we'd be like, red or white? Red. How much? Like, no, it's
on the arm, yeah.
It's on the arm. We started thinking, wait a minute, people are willing to pay for alcohol here. So I went and got a liquor license. Well, not liquor, it was a beer and wine license.
I guess.
Which was a whole ordeal within itself. Dealing with the city, they tried to not approve it, and but in the end, we got it. We did a renovation. We knocked out some of those vignettes to create a larger space, some more open area, and then we just started.
So now you're tapping in from the alcohol, you got the paintings, and you got the space going.
Yeah. People renting space, selling art, and now the alcohol.
How long are you doing this for?
We did it. We had a 5, 5, and 5 on the lease.
Yep.
We were there for almost 10 years. We were there for
wow.
9 years. We were about to exercise the last option, the last 5-year option. And the building that we leased was owned by the city of San Francisco. They had a management company that ran it, which we were
in good
standing with. And also back in 2008, they had give us a rent abatement because of the economy. And we were paying, I think our rent was like $10,000, and they gave us like a $2,500 rent abatement. And in writing, they agreed that this rent abatement would continue into the next term if we exercise the option. When we go to exercise the option, they had fired that management company, hired someone new, and they wouldn't honor it. So they wanted what the rent would have been from
20.
right. So now they wanted $15,000 a month
Oh, wow.
when we were paying 76 or 75 or whatever it was.
They're doubling you, right?
They were doubling it. So we tried to play hardball with them, and they wouldn't do it. We lost. I lost. And when I left San Francisco in 2021, the broom that I used to sweep out that place was still sitting in the window. They never leased it.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, you know, on them. So
you leave there in 21.
left there in 21.
Okay. How long after you closed down did you leave?
So we closed in 2014.
Okay.
Okay. Then.
Oh my! So it was not rented for 7 years.
Yeah. Yep. 7 years. It was vacant.
Wow.
Yep.
Bad mistake on their part.
Yep.
Okay.
After that, my business partner and I were like, all right, let's find another space.
Did you ever try to go back into that space?
Well, that's what I was going to say. No, not into that space. We tried to find another space, but at that time, the rents had skyrocketed. They were 2-3 times for what we had for 5,000 square feet. They were looking for like $30,000 a month.
Shit.
Most places, and we had a really good.
Now Frisco
area.
back then is doing well, or is it today?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Like San Francisco at that time.
Oh yeah, it was booming.
It was still when San Francisco was San
Yeah,
Francisco.
yeah. Restaurants, bars, real estate.
When did
retail.
it change?
It
Was
started
that during
changing.
COVID?
No, before that actually. 2015, for some reason, you started to see.
Got very homelessly, right?
Yes. Well, it's always been like that, but
Oh,
it just
was.
became more and more. What was happening in San Francisco was, or other states were busing homeless people in and just dropping them off in San Francisco because San Francisco has such a large social.
I guess
You can get everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you get food stamps. You get this,
whatever you
right?
want,
Do whatever you want, right? So they were. Nevada was busing people. You know, Arizona were just dropping it off at the bus terminal. So it started to get really bad. But what started to happen was you started to walk down like Market Street, which is the main thoroughfare, and it would be vacant retail space after vacant retail spaces. Vacant. It was like vacancy. Everything was just starting to go out of business.
Wow.
And a lot of that actually had to do with the city making deals with the tech companies to move them into the city and give them tax. They gave them tax incentives to move from, you know, San Jose or wherever they were into the city. And when that happened, you know, these tech companies are paying like $80,000 a year salaries for kids coming out of school. So the rents started to skyrocket to the point where the people, the mom and pop stores and the people who live in San Francisco couldn't afford to be there anymore. And so when that started to happen,
took them all out.
Everything just started to, people just started to leave.
And then everybody went to Austin.
Right.
Everybody started going to Texas.
And whatever. Right.
So all those tech companies, after their leases were up, they started moving to Austin, and that's created this in 2015.
Right. So that's when it really started. And then COVID hit, and it was just it was bad.
What is it like today? Still bad? Or
When
when was the last time you were in San Fran?
I left in 2021, I haven't been back.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't been back.
Yeah, I heard it was really. I heard you can't even walk down the street there anymore.
Yes.
Cars are breaking into everything.
Well, that was always something that happened there. Like,
it was.
It was constant. Like you'd walk down the street, like every car had its window broken.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've watched people break into cars and I call the police, and they don't even show up.
That bad?
Yeah, that bad.
Wow.
Like they would let you do anything there.
Worse than LA?
I think so. You go to San Francisco and you will. I've seen cops walk by people shooting up and do nothing.
Wow.
Like in a tourist with like kids around, like just, I mean, crazy. Like they did nothing.
Jesus Christ.
Unless it was a violent crime, the cops wouldn't show up. They wouldn't do anything.
Wow.
And so what happens when you know, it starts to snowball and all of a sudden everyone thinks they can do whatever they want.
Wow.
And the city became a nightmare. And the politics there are crazy.
Yeah, I'm not into
They
politics, but that,
Yeah, no, I know.
that
I'm just
guy
saying they
did-
just
yeah,
let you do anything. I'm saying,
I get-
yeah,
yeah,
let you do
that's-
anything.
I would
I mean,
never be
it
able
just doesn't work anywhere. You know,
It was so funny. I was offered a couple positions in California from Keller, like OPs, and I'm so glad I didn't do it because I'm not a California guy. It's just not me. You know, there's nothing against it, but
No.
it's a great place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there type of deal. It's even Orange County. I don't feel comfortable.
no,
there.
I didn't like Orange
I
County.
don't
Yeah,
feel
was-
comfortable in California for some reason. I'm looking forward to it in a couple of weeks. I think next week I'm going to San Diego.
San Diego's nice.
Hey, that's beautiful. My cousin lives there, so I'm hoping to get a beer and a dinner with him on the last day. But I heard San Diego's really nice. I heard that's the nicest place in California still.
I would agree.
I remember Austin when that started getting everybody from California, and it peaked. But the same thing happened there. They were busting in a lot of the homeless there.
Yeah,
I guess
Austin has a huge homeless problem too.
But I think they cleaned it up.
Yes,
Last time I was
it's
there,
been
they pretty
better.
much cleaned up.
So-
Austin. But their retail, I mean, their sales went down. We were down there, me and my partner, Jeannie, I'm sure you know who she is. We went down there. We were looking to buy a property together. And my agent down there, Paul, I was looking at that back in 2010, I think it was, 2009, 2010. I didn't buy a property, and it was, at the time, it was in Austin, for a penthouse was 400 grand. I'm just being, Linda, one day was sitting there, maybe 5 years later, I go to Sullivan Steakhouse in Austin. I don't know if you've ever been to Austin, but there was really good food. And it's funny, one of the guys that I coached baseball with owned a bunch of steak places. And he owned this restaurant. So we're sitting in there having dinner, and Linda came up to me and said, why aren't you and Jeannie looking at the place across the street? Yeah. So she said, yeah, you fucked up. I was like, what do you mean? And she said, it went, today they were asking for like 2.8 million for that same property that you were paying 400. We went down a couple of years afterwards, and that same property was like 3 million at that point. It was just sickening how it went up. So we're like, we're always down here, it'd be easier just to come when we're going in and out, just have a place instead of spending all of this crazy hotel rooms and all of that. And just get a place, get a 3-bedroom, and just rent it out for when our staff goes in and out. And then, rent it out when you're not using it. They were looking for a 1-bedroom, I think it was nine to $1 million. And I heard my agent told me not to buy because he saw was going to be some kind of decrease in the sales over there. Heard today you get that same property now for 600. It's starting to really come down in Austin, which is scary.
Yeah.
Because that's a great town. It really is. It needs a little, work, I think, but it is what it is for Texas. I love it. So you come back to New York.
Well, yeah. So, after that, we looked for another space, couldn't find.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what did you do in that time from 15
So I was
to
gonna tell
21?
you, I was in the food truck business.
The food truck business.
Yeah, we had 2 food trucks.
Pretty cool.
And then it was very successful, but we were having just issues. And my business partner's friend owned a restaurant, so the food was coming from there, and he was sending the employees to the truck, and they were just a disaster.
That must be a tough
position. It was tough. Anyways, we got out of that, and then I got back into the real estate business in California. I started working for what is the largest independently owned brokerage firm in San Francisco called Starboard. They've been around for about 40 years.
What's the name of it?
Starboard, like Starboard, like a ship, like Starboard.
Sure.
They were, weirdly enough, before Sutton became Colliers, they were part of an international conglomerate called TCN Worldwide.
Okay.
So if you were in New York and you do a deal in San Francisco, you had someone you could call and you wouldn't get screwed over, right? Kind of like Keller, where you can call. Right. So this happened to be our San Francisco affiliate, and when I got my license, I got a call from the principal of the company saying, "I see you're in New York." I knew the guy. We had met before at a conference, and he, when we come down, we talked, we had lunch, and that was it. Started working there.
So now you're getting into commercial real estate in San Francisco. Yes. What's that like?
That was good.
Because retail had to suck.
Retail, I was doing mostly retail.
Oh, wow.
The thing is, there was a lot of retail. There was a lot of action in retail. It was just certain parts of the city that were starting to
get screwed up.
But the rents were really high. There's a lot of high-end tenants that are in San
Francisco.
So
the rents are still high.
Oh, yeah, the rents are still high. I mean, the rents are even higher now.
That's interesting.
It's crazy. Like the residential rents are still, they're on par with New York, sometimes even higher.
Well, you can't get anything under $1 million in San
No, but I'm talking even rental. Like we're talking about $5,000 a month for a studio in some places.
Wow.
And then the retail rents are like they're not exactly comparable in Manhattan, but they're up there. Talking $100, $125 a square foot.
Wow.
Yeah, or more, depending, or it could be less. But the average was probably like $78 a square foot for
It's
retail.
higher than New York
It's
in
high.
some places.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What's the
So,
office leases like?
so office was office rents like in you could get up there too. You're talking about 40, 50, $60 a square foot in downtown, in the financial district.
You know what I paid in the city when I during COVID?
Nothing probably.
21 a foot.
Yeah.
28,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Paying 21 a foot. I could have got it at 18 a foot. That was during COVID.
Yeah.
And then when we went to renegotiate the lease, they wanted 68.
Of course.
And I literally, my office, I don't think you ever saw it. I had a very nice office. My personal office was almost the size of the studio. And I had a view of Grand Central. And during the holidays, it was the most beautiful view you could have. It's 21 a foot. And seeing where it went, like the city, that's I think my tenant, when we were subletting it from, I think they were paying 100 a foot. That's how bad it got in the city. So I can only imagine what it was like across the country.
Yeah, so San Francisco, the office market got decimated. I mean,
Is it back now,
wiped
or is it?
Not really. It's getting a little better. What's happening is the thing with San Francisco is always that it's always kind of come back. That's been its thing, the .com error, and then it crashed, and then it came back. So
The
it's
.com's out
cyclical.
of San Fran too? Or?
Yeah,
That was at San Fran?
yeah.
I didn't realize that.
But it always bounces back. So people are betting on San Francisco, and you can buy an office building now that was $300 million for $50 million.
Wow.
Right. So people are taking advantage of that with the hopes that things are going to come back.
That was the biggest mistake I made in the city. Right after when we were looking for more space. I don't know if you knew this, but I looked at one place, Edward and I, and it was interesting. It was right around the corner. It was on Madison. I don't remember the exact address. I wouldn't say it anyway, but it was between Madison and Park in the 40s. I don't remember the exact street. But they were willing to do a deal, give me 50% ownership. I took 60% of the building.
Okay.
And they were giving me 50% of the ownership in the building, no money down. They were going to refinance it, and 50-50 partners. But I had, like I said, the responsibility of it was 60% owned. Like I had to lease out 60% of the building, and I owned 50%. My stupid ass on both buildings, the same deal. One was 48%, the other one was 50%. The 50% we were ready to lock in. I said, I want 51%. And the reason was because this guy ran this building into the ground. They had no tenants whatsoever. So I was like, if even getting into a business with him, if the other 40% is not going to be, who's going to get stuck covering it? Most likely be me.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to take the shot. Biggest regret I made. Biggest regret. Because I went back to him afterwards and said, yeah, I'll do it. And he was like, yeah, it's too late. You screwed up on that one. Ownership.
You got to jump on those things when you can.
Both buildings.
I know.
Both buildings told me to scratch at the same time. And I was like, all right, well, we'll go to the other one. And they were like, nope, too late. We got to rent it. It was, I guess somebody else took the deal.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
I'm sure they did.
The opportunity that I had back then, and this was recent. This is literally 2-3 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah,
and
there's
now
a lot of opportunities.
those buildings are probably 60, 70 million right now.
Absolutely.
But is what it is. You live and learn. And I thought I was going to get every building in the world if I just waited, because that was the doom and gloom was the whole thing in the city, and then it bounced back. And I'm always on the positive note, where it's always like you were saying with San Fran, where it's always going to pop and it's going to turn back around. I felt the same way. And you're starting to see it in the city now. We were walking to a Ranger game the other night, me and Erica, and we're going to see the last Ranger game. I could not believe how many people were walking around the city. I could not believe how many people were in the city. It was so mobbed. It was probably a lot more crowded than it was before COVID. That's how bad, like how crowded it is. And
yeah, when I moved back from California, I moved into Manhattan. I was living in Manhattan. I hated it.
Did you really?
Hated it.
I wouldn't live in the city.
No, it was too many. I mean, I've lived in the city before. I mean, after college.
Sure.
It was completely different. I mean, just so many people, and just it's too much. It's too much for me.
Yeah, I could probably live in the city for free with my aunt, and I wouldn't live in that. It's just too much for me. I don't like it. I don't like the vibe, and I'm one of those guys that likes to be left alone. I'm quiet, Leave me, even when my family's over, I'll sit in a room by myself and just enjoy myself.
Yeah.
And but anyway, so you come back into the city now. You moved back in 21.
Moved back in 21. I took I had a friend of mine that I started at Colliers with who was at Lee and Associates
Okay.
in Manhattan. So I went over there, started working with him. We didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, you know.
Partnership or?
Yes, we were. Yeah, I was supposed to. It was a team, but yes, we were supposed to be partners. And I just didn't like how he became. I knew him for many years. We were good friends and business associates, but he wasn't
Just didn't
honest.
work well.
He wasn't honest.
Okay.
And I won't deal with
Tell
that.
it. Yeah, I agree
I
with that.
won't.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know.
You can't.
Anyway, it's just not something that I.
So you move on from that. And
So and then I ended up with another guy that I started Colliers, had a small company in Mineola. Okay. So I started over there. I was reverse commuting, which was awful. Probably worse than commuting, I think.
I was going to say that.
Because when you're leaving Manhattan, everyone's coming in.
That's right.
And vice versa. So it's maddening.
Yep.
Right? You're going against all the traffic. But anyway, so I did that for a while commuting. I was like, if I'm gonna continue working on Long Island, I'm gonna move to Long Island. So I moved to Long Island.
What was that like, the transfer from New York City to Long Island? Just as a brokerage.
Well, it's different. I know I never really did commercial real estate in Manhattan.
Okay.
Long Island I know very well. Sure. I did Long Island. I know the market. I know how it operates. Not that New York's much different, but it is different.
So when you were when you first started out, you were on Long Island?
Yeah, we were in Lake Success. Yes.
Oh, I forgot that.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah,
I thought you were in the city. Okay.
No, this was Colliers. Well, this was Sutton, but which is Colliers, Long Island.
Okay.
So yes, I started out in the Long Island market. So I knew the market very well.
Did Joe LaPresti work there too, or he was just JLL?
I think he might have.
I thought he was a Collier too.
He might have.
And then he moved over to JLL.
Yeah. When he sold out to JLL, to Colliers, a lot of people left.
Yeah, and then they all went to JLL.
Yeah, they went to other companies. A lot of people started their own companies and stuff. Yeah, a lot of people took off. My understanding was it became a lot more corporate than they were used to at Sutton, so they just didn't want to deal with it, and they did their own thing. So yeah, a lot of people, Cushman, JLL.
Bob Knackel wasn't with you guys.
He was with Cushman.
He was with Cushman after. Well, it was Bob Knackel, right?
It was Knackel and Massey.
Massey and Knackel,
right.
Right.
And then I think
who was he with before that?
That maybe before that he was with Cushman.
Oh, he was with Cushman.
Maybe that's
what
it was.
Went to JLL after that.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes. But now he's back on his own.
Yes,
he got out of that.
He's a great guy too.
Yeah, he got out of that contract.
He's brilliant.
Yeah. Paul's a good guy too.
Yeah, both of them.
I know Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, they're both really good. I always see Bob at the Ranger games. He's a big Ranger fan, so I see him a lot of it, and we're in the club together. I bump into him a lot there. Great guy, and he's one of the smartest guys I ever.
He moved to he's on Long Island now.
Yeah, he's on the island, and he has the map, and he had that map that he had that space.
His map room.
It was the map room. Yeah, have you ever been in that? Or?
I have not, but
pretty cool.
I plan on.
That's pretty cool.
Over there, yeah.
So you end up So you end up on the island, and you're doing commercial real estate again.
Mm-hmm.
And you're with what company now?
It's called ACC Space.
ACC
Space was going back to my days at Colliers. The guy I worked under, a guy named Jim Fitzsimmons, he's in his 80s now. He ran the investment department. The company was divided into asset types. So you had your office department, you had your industrial, you had your retail. And then you had investment, which kind of did everything.
Okay.
So I worked under him. And then when Colliers bought them out, him and the head of property management left. And they started a company with a developer, a guy named Mike Ambrosino.
I know him.
Yeah, so that's ACC, is Ambrosino Consulting Corporation.
Yeah, I don't know why I know Mike, but I know him.
Yeah, so the three of them teamed up.
Mm-hmm.
They did very well. John Proscia, who was the property manager, just really knocked it out of the ballpark.
I'm trying to figure out where I know him from. Not John, Mike.
Mike, yeah.
Is he a Long Island guy? Or?
Yeah, he's a Long Island guy. Yeah,
Okay.
Does a lot of development in Long Island. I want to say he lives in like Mutton Town or Brookville or something like that.
Maybe that's from where. Okay. So you guys are rocking it there.
Yeah. So that was so Jimmy and them started, but by the time I got there, Jimmy retired.
Okay.
John retired and sold the property management business to Mike Ambrosino. And then another guy I started.
I think that's where I know him from.
Yeah.
Now you just said that. I think that's where it's the property management. I think I crossed paths with him in that.
Okay, probably. Yeah, they're all over the place.
I think I referred something to him because we didn't do a Long Island business when I was in the city.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it was. I could be mistaken, but I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, it's good.
It's interesting.
So anyway, then this guy that I worked with, actually started in the business with, he took over the brokerage of the company. Okay. And that's
so it's a property managed brokerage.
Property managed brokerage, development and architecture. They had everything under one roof, and he owned the building too. So it was all
God bless him.
under one roof.
So he's in good position, the guy.
Yeah, he was in a good position, but he's a good guy who just doesn't know how to run a business.
Happens a lot.
Yeah, happens a lot. You know, he's a really good broker, does really well. He just doesn't know how to run a business.
Right.
Okay, nothing wrong with that. But it just wasn't working. Before I got there, there was only one other broker that was there. But prior to that, he had, I want to say, 6 other guys that worked at the company. All of them left. One went to college. I mean, one went to JLL. One went to Cushman. They all left. And it was just because of the way it was being operated. So I came in there, and you know, it was tough. It was tough working there.
Okay. So you do your stint there.
It was just tough getting paid. It was tough. It was always an issue. You know,
and in commercial, you want to get paid.
Get paid.
You gotta.
And
it's
it's like
so long sometimes.
Right. And the check comes in, and you know the money's there, but you still wouldn't cut you the check, kind of thing. And then he would,
it's enough. Yeah.
Enough. It's like, yeah. So anyway,
when did you meet Linda?
Actually, Carol is the one who
Carol. Yeah.
Carol contacted me. This was right after I parted ways with ACC. I got a call from Carol.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and I met her. Obviously I know Keller. I know who Keller is. And at first I was kind of on the fence. I had a bunch of offers already. From national company, national.
You're probably thinking Keller's a residential company.
But that's
right?
exactly where my mind was.
But there's so much opportunity with that also, so I can see your mind going in a different direction with that too.
Right. So, and I had other offers from commercial companies, big commercial companies. So, it was kind of hard for me to
jump.
Yeah, to jump, make that jump. But
so what made the final decision to do it? I don't think title matters at that point, right? It's just, was it the opportunity?
It was the opportunity. It was the opportunity to come into this marketing center and do kind of fill in a role that it needed. You have residential brokers that try to do commercial. I mean, I
love that. Yep.
Okay, and this is the thing is that what I see is when you become successful in residential, you're like, I can do anything. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can do a commercial deal. What's the difference? There's a huge difference.
Big difference.
Huge difference.
You're not doing
people
value to the client.
Don't realize that, and a lot of people aren't smart enough to realize that, or admit to themselves that maybe I need help. And then there's a lot of people in the company who are smart enough to know that. Mm-hmm. That they won't touch it because they don't know how to do it.
Yeah, we never touch it.
Right? Yeah. So I came in there, and all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, we have a commercial guy here who knows what he's talking about. Now I can, hey, I got that client that wanted this, I got this one. So, and Carol said, you're going to get referrals, and it's interesting. So I made the jump. I love it. I have to tell you, it's great. I mean, I love the culture. I've never been in a company that has a culture like this. Everywhere else is just cutthroat. Like everyone's just, someone will steal a deal from you in your office.
Yeah.
You're not worried about the outside brokers stealing.
But you said something which is really interesting because I agree with you 1,000% on it. But you have to, in my position, you got to play. You got to play the middle. You got to be Switzerland, obviously. But it's interesting what you said, where commercial brokers, and I always found this interesting, where you'll talk to real commercial guys. I'm talking guys that really focus on commercial. They will not touch residential if you dabbling around on the weekends is a lot. Imagine.
Yeah, I only did it because it was a friend of the
I know.
family, and he
But I
asked
know,
me to do
but
it. Otherwise,
that's
I would have
great.
never. Right, I would have never
That's
done it.
almost unheard of. They
Right.
want their
And that
weekends
was my
off.
first year in the
I get
business
it,
too, right?
I'm not judging you.
No,
I'm
no,
just
I'm just saying,
saying.
yeah.
But that was a stretch,
Right,
and
right.
right now I've literally who was it? I think it might have been Joe, because I'm really good friends with Joe LaPresti, and his own residential property is like his mother is this. He refers it out to my group, or he refer it to me, obviously, because of the business that we do together and all the crap. And I said to him, Joe, you're licensed. Why wouldn't you? And it's the same reason you don't do it. You can do it, but you're not going to, because it's you're not doing right for the client.
Smart enough to know that's not his.
Residential guys don't really do that, though. It's weird because, like you said, resi people think they could really tap into that market until they realize they can't. And I think, that's the interesting part, where you can end up losing a lot of money dabbling around in something for not only you, but for your client. It could hurt.
Yeah, and also, and it's not a good look for a company either, right? It's not only your name, it's the Keller name,
Yeah, it is.
right? So you're out there and you're doing something, and you're representing yourself as being able to do a certain type of deal, which you don't know how to do.
It's interesting.
Doesn't look good for anybody.
No, you're right.
And there, you can get. Hey, you can get in trouble legally. There's a million things that can happen.
Things that can go on.
And most of the time, you don't lease it or you don't sell it because you don't know the right avenue of how to market a commercial property or how to.
I was talking to one cat, not mentioning names, and it was interesting, though, where going over a lease, and the person, it was for me personally, and talking to a broker, and we got into it, free rent, we got into this, whatever, construction, all of this. And they're like, no, it's just, you're taking the spot, and it's going to be a 10-year lease, and I'm going to get 1 month's rent. No, we're going opposite ways here. But that's what I normally see in that, except for I don't want to say the real brokers, but the real commercial brokers. But it is interesting. Even in commercial, I've talked to guys where they specialize in retail. They won't even go off of that. Like, I know retail guys that will not leave retail and go into selling of a building. It gets that deep, where, where in the commercial world. But it's interesting. And me and Edward were talking about this, and I'm sure you started, and we're getting into this where I think where you got into Keller at the right time. And I'm not just saying that. I really do believe in the commercial world. I think that's our biggest upside right now, because we pretty much own the residential world. We pretty much got a lockdown on that. We're the number one company in the world, and it's for a reason. Commercial, I really think we're going to surprise a lot of people, especially with the new group that basically took us over. I think there's a lot of upside with Stone Point. And I'm excited to see where that's going to go, because I've been hearing rumbles of they're going to tap into that world. And that's going to be interesting.
I've even read it. There's articles.
Oh, there is it?
Yeah, I read someone
read
recently that they were talking about commercial in an article at some point.
That's going to be interesting. And I think you guys got in at the right time. And I think this is the right time to really start building it, where me and Edward have been talking about this for years, how to build up a commercial brokerage. And it's funny, some of my partners in the residential side are like, oh, no, we're going to keep it here. I don't think that's the way it's going to work. I think it's got to work in the commercial world, especially in New York. We can control the world out of New York, and we do. And it's not, I don't want to come off as a cocky, saying that about New York City, but New York City controls the world when it comes to real estate, whether it's residential or commercial. We control the world. If you could do it in New York, you could do it anywhere, and that's right. And it was funny, we were just talking about this with Matt. When I first got into the commercial world, and I was talking, not the commercial world, when I first got into the world of real estate in New York City, I was a Long Island guy. So I didn't really know New York City. I was a cop in New York, but I didn't know the real estate world. I did property management in the city, but again, never really dealt in New York City. When I was offered positions in other companies, I was offered one big job, and the one thing they told me to do, you have to stay out of New York City. You can run Long Island, Brooklyn, Queens, everywhere except for New York City. And I wondered why. And I realized that afterwards, when I started taking it over, that's why. I didn't know anything about it when I first got into it. So you could do as much damage in New York by not knowing it, And one of the things that was funny about it was they would sit there and say, well, we're different because we're in New York City. And we are.
They are.
New York City people are different
Absolutely.
than everywhere else. But with that being said, there's such an upside in a commercial world with Keller Williams right now. It's going to be nonstop. It really is. So I think you made a really good choice. Tell me some, like, just recently, like, coming over, what is some of the craziest deals that you ever do any, like, crazy upside of deals where, like, have you seen in the commercial world or?
I've seen a lot of crazy things.
Like,
I mean,
like what's
I
the,
could talk all day about crazy
right?
things.
Like, what's the, because I hear so many different stories about it. Like, there's one that Edward's telling me now where he's selling a building on Long Island, but then in the same breath, he's selling something in Baltimore. That's got like $80 million or something like that. And there was another one that was a $300 million property being sold, and it ended up trashing out and ended up selling for $50 million. It's getting like really crazy in the commercial world. So what I'm asking, not crazy deals, where do you see the market going in commercial world? Is it upside? Is it, what do you think?
Well,
I'm sure you like me, always positive too.
Yeah, I
mean,
try to
don't-
always be positive. But what I'm seeing right now, the most of, is, and mostly in the boroughs, it's not really Long Island, but with the new City of Yes housing that was passed, which, as you know, loosens zoning restrictions so you can build more housing. With that,
You want to touch on that a little bit more?
yeah, sure. So it's something that passed the first of this year, and it basically, the purpose of it is to build more housing. New York, as we know, needs more housing. So what it's done is it's loosened the zoning restrictions for, what you can build, how much you can build. For example, normally, like let's say in Jamaica, Queens, you can usually build 3 times the floor area ratio. So real simple, if you have a 10,000 square foot plot, you can build a 30,000 square foot building. Okay. And before the City of Yes, there had to be some inclusionary housing. There are affordable housing units. Now what they've done is, with the City of Yes, you can build that 30,000 square foot building all free market. However, if you do inclusionary housing, you can build 3.9 times the FAR. So you can build a bigger building.
Okay.
If you put the inclusionary housing. Okay. And then there's just simple things like now you can legally rent out an in-law suite, your basement. You can rent out your garage. If you have more land on your property, you can build accessory housing and legally rent that out. And they've also allowed now office conversions. I built an office building. Before, if you want to convert an office building into residential, you had to go through the whole variance process. You don't have to do that anymore. So you still have to file for the permits and the whole thing, but you don't have to go through the whole process. So it makes it a lot easier to take an office building and convert it into residential. So with that,
Are you seeing a lot of that? Or
in Manhattan, that's happening.
Okay.
I don't see that as much in Queens
that
or
must be
Brooklyn.
so much money, though. Wouldn't it be cheaper to knock the damn thing down because the plumbing and everything else, right? It's half a dozen, right? It's like,
yeah. I don't know. Like knocking a building down and rebuilding, it's expensive.
yeah, like,
That's a
but
big
doing
project.
a whole gut reno, just plumbing alone would be a fortune, right? And something like that.
Yeah,
dividing
plumbing
it
is
up.
expensive. Yeah, but
You really think about it.
but some buildings are almost lend itself to being
I guess
converted
so,
very.
yeah.
If you have office, it's
Make-
not,
yeah, if it
not
makes
that
sense,
difficult. Yeah, it depends on the building. But so I'm seeing a lot of people that are trying to sell their property, not for the value of the building that's on it, for the value of the land.
Sure,
But everyone thinks that they're sitting on a gold mine.
everyone does. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
people are pricing things just. It's ridiculous. Something maybe worth $3-4 million. People want $15 million.
It's insane like that.
It's crazy. So that's kind of what's happening. There's a lot of redevelopment out there, a lot of opportunities, and a lot of people that are trying to get in on this City of Yes housing, sell their property to a developer, redevelop it, think they're gonna,
Make the
ride
score.
off in the sunset and whatever. And in some cases, some people get the money that they're looking for. Other cases, it's really hard. Because the cost of building has gone up. If you already have a structure, you have to demo the structure. There's a lot involved. If it's just a raw piece of land, it's a little different.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I have a bunch of redevelopment projects I'm working on, a lot of pieces of land. Some have, again, some have structures, but
You do anything with John Ledecky over in the UBS? That's an interesting property.
Yeah.
I know John well. Not well, but I know him. And when that was going up, we were talking about that. That was an interesting piece, what he's doing over there.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to do resi over there, too, but there is none, from what I heard.
not that I know of.
Yeah.
But Hempstead just got a $10 million grant from Hochul to revitalize Hempstead.
Interesting.
Now, I don't know how far $10 million.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what's $10 million these days?
Couple properties,
Right, a
yeah.
couple properties. But it's something that is interesting to people who are interested in developing. It's like, oh, okay, if there's a grant from, the state, then maybe things will change. So I've seen that right now I have 4 pieces that are available for redevelopment in Hempstead. 3 of them are off market directly to the owner. One of them is an exclusive listing. But they're all redevelopment opportunities. The 3 that are off market are partially entitled. They have everything but the permits to build because they don't plan on building it. Okay, so they have the zoning, all the zoning has been approved, all the environmentals have been approved. They just don't have the permits. They never filed for them because they don't plan on building it. But all the paperwork's there, everything from the town, all the approvals are there.
Everything's there.
How many units you can build, if it's everything's there.
Wow. So 2025, 2026, I can't believe we're almost halfway
Yeah, it's
done
crazy.
with 25. Where do you see the commercial world going for you? What are you most excited about with Keller Williams?
I'm excited about. First of all, just building a commercial team. I have 2 guys, but it's just not enough. I need brokers. I also need experienced brokers too, and that's been challenging right now. We're working on it. But I'd like to see more, experienced brokers come over here and take advantage of what Keller has.
Okay.
And I think I know a lot of commercial brokers just have this, just like you said, like when I first met with Carol, I had the same thought, like it's a residential firm.
Mm-hmm.
But you have this whole other division. You have a whole KW commercial that does commercial, and these are experienced brokers. And these people have come from big companies. It's not like they just came out of nowhere and started doing commercial, right? I mean, I've talked to guys who come from Colliers, who came from JLL, came from Cushman, and are at Keller.
Mm-hmm.
That says something to me.
There's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's right.
It's not just some guy who work for, has a little experience and is coming. These are big guys that are coming over. So I'd like to see more of that.
Okay.
And then, I just really want to, I want to get a foothold. I want us to be, the commercial firm on Long Island that people, recognize and that people, associate with commercial, not just with residential. That we're players, and we are.
Yeah, like I said, we were talking about it, and I think we have the ability to open up maybe a commercial branch not attached to the market center, its own market center in some way, and do it separate from the.
And that's a great idea. Because the other thing too is that with commercial, I don't use the MLS.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, obviously I have to be a member because Keller's right.
Yep.
I don't use the MLS.
That's right.
Which you don't have all this paperwork that you have to do for
100%.
right? And so commercial firms, as long as the broker of record opts out, the whole firm is opted out.
That's
Right? And the same thing with residential, actually.
Yeah.
Residential can rob, but then they can't get the MLS, right? So with that, if you had a commercial division and you had another broker of record, you wouldn't have to join NAR. You'd have to deal with that. That would be beautiful.
Possibility.
Yeah.
Definitely a possibility.
Not that it's a problem.
I get it.
But it's there.
We're talking about it.
It's there. Yeah.
And that's some of the stuff that we're talking about. What I like to do, and I think we should do it, and we'll talk off air, I think we should get on a call with a group of us and just brainstorm and see what would be the best way to really do it and branch out and see what we can do with this. Because, again, I think there's amazing upside with this. I think the commercial division especially, it's just so much that we're not missing out on. We're starting to take advantage of it now, and I'm getting really excited about it. Anyway, thank you for coming in. I really appreciate everything. Appreciate working with you. I'm looking forward to watching what you do out on the island, and I'm always here if you need anything.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming in, buddy.
All right, man. Take care of yourself.